I thought that this might be the week where we got to skip doing this video. Florida State, a huge favorite against Wake Forest. Surely at a sleepy nooner, the refs would not have a major impact. But way too many of you guys hit me up on YouTube, Twitter, or X, whatever, and Facebook, all the same, saying that we needed this video after this week. And I had my notepad out during the game, and I was keeping track. I was thinking about letting the ACC refs off easy this weekend, not saying a lot. You guys asked for it, so here we go. We're going to keep calling these out for two main reasons. Number one, when something is done poorly in any game, we call it out. Whether it's Mike Norvell making a mistake, if it's a player that makes a mistake or just does something stupid, we call it out. And we talk about it on this channel. Now, we're pretty positive. So obviously, if good things are done, if things that are done positively, we call those out too. But when there are mistakes made by our coaches, our staff, our players, we call them out. And we're going to do the same thing and hold officials to that same standard. There's no reason that we would just turn a blind eye to blatant incompetence. No matter how much Florida State wins by, no matter if they win or lose, it doesn't matter. When we do that with every other facet of the game, we're going to continue to do it with the officials too. Number two, it serves as one more reason why we need to get out of this conference. The ACC has never cared about the Seminoles. They've always been about basketball. They've always been about the North Carolina schools. We'll talk about this later, but they just don't protect their big brands, and they're pretty blatantly biased against their big brands. So let's get to it. This very first one I thought was a very, very obvious late hit on Coleman, who takes this punt return. Noles up 7-0 at this point early in the game, and the punt comes in from Wake Forest. And what happens? Well, he catches the ball down on a knee and still gets absolutely blown up. I wouldn't call this targeting. I kind of hate the targeting rule anyway, but like he's down on a knee, crouched over with his head down and just gets blindsided, looks around like, hey, can I get some love here? And how that play is not immediately dead, how that's not immediately a 15-yard penalty, which would have allowed the Noles to start up near the 30-yard line, I'm not sure. But when he catches the ball and he's down on the ground there on one knee, you can see, I pause it right here, he's 4 steps away. He's 4 yards away from Keon down on one knee with the ball and comes in and lights him up. No flag called, of course. ACC officials completely miss it. One thing I want to notice about this, and we'll go to the next one, is that we see these plays bunched up at times. Usually you'll have calls that are just consecutively called over and over and over. And it feels like officials of this conference are doing one of two things. We're about to have 3 calls in a row, one at the 8:25 mark of the second quarter, one at the 8:17 mark of the second quarter, and then one at the 6:30 mark of the second quarter. A total of like 5 plays had elapsed. And when we did this a few weeks ago for the Syracuse game, we had like 5 plays in a row that were bad. And so I think one of two things happened. The officials either get caught up in the moment of the game and feel like they need to insert themselves, interject themselves to be part of it, or if you put your tinfoil hat on, they're intentionally trying to keep the game close for as long as they possibly can when they feel like an inferior opponent has a chance to try and keep the game going. Now, again, that's tinfoil hat material right there. I get it, but you could see how it would benefit the ACC if the game stayed closer longer. So this very first one is a hold on Roddick, which was absolutely terrible. It wiped off a Kentron touchdown that was phenomenal, that he caught off the defender, totally mossed the guy, looked back, turned back around, and waved at him nearly while he was running in. He didn't wave at him, unfortunately, but should have. And then they show this Roddick hold from the other side. Absolutely terrible. He keeps his hands inside, just very ticky-tack, he doesn't spin him. He lets go as soon as he breaks contact. I thought this was kind of a rough call. Just because the offensive player puts his hands up does not mean that a hold is happening. I thought this was a pretty weak call on Roddick. And you can call holding on every single play. I get it, but I thought that one was a really, really rough one. As soon as the defender turned his shoulders, Roddick disengaged, and I thought that was a clean block. I didn't have a huge problem with this. I think The defender did a good job, to his credit, of waving his arm in the air and making it look like he was being held. I don't know if he was trying to simulate being held or just trying to mess with Jordan's line of vision, but I thought this was pretty egregious. I didn't think that was a hold. Wiped off a really great play by Kentron. Very next play, on the 2nd and 20, you get a play where Jordan rolls out. Keon makes a catch up against the sideline, and they call an offensive pass interference here. And you can see it kind of on the reverse angle here. We kind of talked about this a couple of days ago when they called a block in the back on Kevin Knowles. Just because a receiver puts his hands on the defender does not mean that he pushed off there. And I don't believe that Keon pushed off. Again, when you really zoom in on it, you can see he didn't really even extend. He's more so feeling for the defender. And then Keon's motion, his sudden jerk back to stop his route and come back to the ball. I mean, Keon falls down. And so I think it's more so just him coming back to the ball is what pulled the defender off. Keon falls down, makes the catch. Again, if he did shove him, it happened well. Look, he's already out of his break there. It happened well before Jordan threw the ball. So I don't really think this was appropriately called. It turned 2 plays back-to-back, turns a 1st and 10 into a 2nd and 35. But again, back-to-back weak calls. Again, I don't think it's offensive pass interference here. I think Keon does a good job feeling for the defender and then breaking off his route, and that's what caused the defender to keep going. The defender kept going because he was running at a full sprint trying to keep up with Coleman. He didn't keep running because Keon pushed him over or anything like that. So kind of weak here. You put your hands on the defender. I guess you give the refs an opportunity to call it, and with ACC refs, you have to play pretty perfect or they're going to call absolutely everything. Here's one that I do understand why it was called, but it just only goes one way in this conference. Shaheem Brown called for not turning around. The commentators are even talking about it right now. He didn't turn his head to the ball. He didn't look back at it. Meanwhile, the same exact thing happened last week. We talked about this. We did the video on it. Same thing happened to Keon Coleman. The Duke defender didn't turn around, didn't play the ball, and they didn't call anything. Same thing here. All right, it's called against Florida State. It's not called the week after. Based on my understanding, the rule is not that you have to get your head around. That's an NFL rule. I don't want to sit here and say this was great coverage by any means, but he's just face guarding him, and it's an underthrown ball that he doesn't really make contact until he gets there. I don't think he does anything wrong there. But again, ACC officials not knowing the rules one week to the next. Florida State had this done against them last week. No big deal. Has it done or does it this week, and it is a big deal. This allowed Wake to continue a drive, get the ball a little bit further in a game that Florida State certainly was starting to put the clamps on, starting to really limit what Wake was able to do. So another rough one. All right, this one at the very end of the half, and I'm going to show 2 in a row, kind of in conjunction. But Jordan Travis scrambles here, 2nd and 10. Not only is he down there and starting his slide, but the defender comes in and jumps on his back again. And no late hit there. Nothing at all. Now, obviously, if that's called, the ball's down at the 12-yard line. The clock is stopped with 35 seconds left, and the ball at the 12-yard line for the Seminoles. Sorry, maybe like the 13th because he's at the 26 there. But Florida State's got a great chance to go put another 7 up on the board. Obviously, they don't here at the end of the half, but not sure why this late hit is not called on a quarterback that's sliding. Jordan hasn't really gotten that call all year. He gets up wondering where it is. You're supposed to protect sliding quarterbacks. You're supposed to protect guys that are going to the ground, and the officials just have not done that. So that's with like 25 seconds left in the half. Look what happens with about 25 seconds gone in this half. A horse collar tackle called on Shaheem Brown, a late hit out of bounds as well. And it's just not the same metric, right? Like, it's just not the same standard. It's a horse collar here, but look back to this play earlier that I'm going to show you on screen, just this still shot. Shout out Tom Lang. I got this off of his Twitter. We call the horse collar when it's on the Wake player, but not when it's on the FSU quarterback. So kind of frustrating there just to see the late hit not called on Jordan at the end of the first half, and then also the horse collar on Jordan not called, but it was called correctly on the Wake defender. So kind of frustrating to see that there. couple more and we'll wrap these up. I know a lot of you guys love these. Every single week, we're going to keep doing them. We're going to keep calling out the BS from this conference. If you're enjoying it, if you've watched these all year, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up. We appreciate you guys' support. Comment below with your thoughts. You always do. You guys are always cracking on them, so I don't even have to tell you guys that. But hit that subscribe button if you are enjoying these. All right, late hit here with 9:24 to go in the game. And I really don't know for what. This was called on Lundy, and the whistle's being blown. I get it, but it's not like they made an extra play. It's just kind of a hard tackle. Threw him down on the ground. I had a pretty big problem with this one. Just unnecessary. You know, you're blowing the whistle to kill the play, but the guys are engaged with the running back and hit him late. And again, you didn't call it when Jordan was sliding down to the ground. These guys are wrapping up, trying to force the tackle, and a late hit on Lundy there is pretty stupid to me. I think that's a pretty horrible call. It's not egregious. It's not, it's not anything inappropriate. The guys turn around and look around like, what in the world? Just a ref making himself part of the game in a way that he just doesn't need to. Frustrating to see. I didn't have any problem with Lundy's hit there. But, ACC officials, what can you do? And then on this one, last play that we'll look at today, should have certainly, in my opinion, been a DPI with 4:44 to go in the game. Unfortunately, not called for whatever reason. Frustrating to see that he is literally pulling Coleman down and engaged with him while the pass is coming in. He's diving at it, pulling his legs, pulling his arm, pulling his shoulder pads. Literally the definition of pass interference. Goes low, takes Keon out, and nothing called there. Keon gets up looking for the flag. Florida State has to attempt a field goal on this play. Should have been DPI in the end zone. Not sure how this isn't called. I think RG3 even mentioned may have gotten away with one there. So frustrating to see. Frustrating that that play is not called. Frustrating that, the refs were pretty terrible throughout the game this weekend. All right, so in this game, the calls really didn't matter. Florida State was a ton more talented, a ton better than Wake Forest was. And so I get it. It sounds like I'm just whining to whine, but the problem here is that in a bigger game, in a rivalry game, or in the ACC championship, do these horrific officials impact a game? They legitimately cost Miami the Georgia Tech game earlier this year, and I know that Mario deserved to lose that because of his play calling, but kid was down. The refs were terrible. I don't know how ACC refs continue to be bad week after week after week. And I'm not even asking the ACC to cheat for us, but it does blow my mind that they don't try to protect the elite teams in their conference. I mean, we shouldn't be shocked after that Board of Trustees meeting when Florida State absolutely called them out and said that we were basically leaving the conference in short order. But they make more money when the elite teams are good. But like I said earlier, they just have never cared about Florida State. They care about the North Carolina schools. They care about basketball schools, and that is what it is. They do the same thing to Miami. They do the same thing to Clemson, and they do the same thing to a lot of their big brands. And again, it just doesn't even make any sense financially. Did you see yesterday in the UGA-UF game, that fourth down call early that kind of swung things back Georgia's way? Of course, shout out to Sunbelt Billy for that horrific 4th and inches call. But UF clearly got that first down. At the very least, there wasn't enough to overturn it. And the officials went to the review monitors and, in a close play, gave it to UGA. And so I'm not asking, again, for the refs to cheat for us. But in other conferences, close calls go to the elite teams because the conference understands that it's in their best interest to protect those teams. Not in the ACC, though. The bigger brands are continually screwed over again and again and again. Hopefully we see a little bit better next week against Pitt, and then obviously the week after with Miami coming to town. But a big shout out to FSU for not letting this impact them. They just sort of keep playing, which is what you want to see. Let the idiots on YouTube and Twitter like me complain, and you just put your head down and continue to play. Keep playing. You didn't see Mike Norvell having a massive meltdown when his team got 2 bad penalties called on him back-to-back to make it a 2nd and 35. He just went out there and kept coaching. He just went out there and continued to work, continued to coach up his team, and Florida State was the better for it. If you just keep winning, it won't matter. But it is tough sometimes to win 11 on 17, 18, or whatever that number of officials is on the field. Again, hopefully better this weekend on the road at Pitt. Hopefully better in the last few games and then the ACC championship. And then if you can make the playoff, hopefully you don't have ACC officials, which you shouldn't, but who knows with this conference. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys for all of the support. Go join our Patreon if you haven't already. It's patreon.com/DFNS. Great way to support the channel, the program, and the show. We love you guys. Talk to you soon. Hopefully do not have to do another video like this next week, but knowing this conference, we probably will. Thank you guys for tuning in. Go Noles.